Hello, my name is Roy Poyan, and I'm the Director of Families Impacted by Opioids. I'd like to welcome you to this next episode of Fentanyl and Families in Harm's Way. We want to discuss in this session the spirituality involved in our faith as we journey with somebody who has a substance use disorder. This is not an easy topic to discuss. I want to be sensitive that universally everybody practices their religion, even when in the same religion, in their own individual way. So it's not my place to impose on you areas of things that you need to do. That's not the intention. What the intention is to raise the topic that this is a battle of good and evil. And whether or not you define evil in a certain way from somebody else, that doesn't matter. It's how you define it to yourself. Whether you define goodness in the Lord in some way and then somebody else, once again, that doesn't matter. It's what's of value to you. But in any way that you want to evaluate it, it's happening. And to say that it's not is almost a form of denial of the reality of what is our lives as we look at our lives eternally. So when we come upon our giving to this person who is experiencing substance use disorders, a lot of things from the Bible start to come into play, like forgiveness, like the prodigal son, like other types of parables that we have studied and find value and worth in, like the crying out of David in Psalms. So when we're looking at our faith as Christians, that's something that I can speak a little bit more with awareness about. So for somebody that is more considering a universal being our Judaism or Muslim or Buddha, these are areas that I can't speak on, and I'll just admit that up front. However, God is God, and I do believe that most religions see God as a loving God. And with that in mind, He loves us, which means as we go through this, He does not abandon us. So the question is, how will you go about, and we can say this regardless of your religion, how are you going to use your faith? And that is something that you can make a plan around. I plan to, lift this suffering up to the Lord verbally. I plan to read the Bible and pray. I plan to, do more of my religious faith practices in terms of what we know our faith in our church, whatever that is, mosque or temple, has told us. This is how you practice your faith in times of strife and trouble. Most religions have a segment to them that addresses the issues of challenges in our life. What I'm asking in this seminar is that you come to the family table and you write down what you know about your faith, not what you think it should resolve or how it's going to make things better. What do you know about your faith? That's all we're asking you to identify with. Because we believe that once we heighten the awareness that this is a journey of faith and this is a battle between good and evil that's being played out above and outside of us, then we can more readily grab hold of what does it mean to us from a spiritual sense. It's important to take the time to do that because you're going to experience an incredible expression of love at the same time that you're going to experience an incredible expression of anger and hatred. And what you will find, I believe, is that love conquers. And to see that now in the throes of this is difficult, but it's supposed to be. Because faith is about that which is, but is not seen. So I want to thank you for allowing me this privilege to talk on such a universally difficult topic, but I wasn't going to shrug my responsibility. I don't see how anybody can address addiction and not in some way also address what is my personal belief in God and good and evil and faith? How strong is my faith? Not practiced, but my core faith, my understanding of what I believe and value. How you play that out is going to be the challenges. It could be the challenges here in order that you play out your faith, because in the end, you will have strengthened your relationship with God. Come on, let's go to the family table and see how we can put some of these pieces together. They're yours, and you will decide what's the best fit for you. And if this is not comfortable for you, go ahead and skip this episode and move to the next one. But don't give up on the course, because this is the only segment in this course that we actually do this kind of talking and review. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the family table today. This is kind of an exciting topic to talk about, probably more so if you're already someone who has a spiritually based life. It may be that you don't, and there's no judgment here. But the things that I say are just suggestive. They're not trying to guide you towards a certain religion or a way of looking at your faith life and how you view the universe or God or Jehovah or Allah. It's not about that. It's about what you believe is your spiritual base. And when we start to look at things like what is typically involved in our spiritual faith practices, there's a certain kind of separation. There's the one where we say, I live a prayerful life. My identity of myself with the Lord is mine. And I allow my faith to guide me. And what I seek to do is what God would have me to do. That's all kind of like encapsulated in a lot of Christianology way of looking at, what is faith and what is our religion and what is our practice. And then there's a portion of that same where we're saying, and we share this in fellowship, in communio with others, with family, friends, people at church, people at work, people on the sports teams that we're playing, when we're going through the cashier in a grocery line. In all aspects of our life, we share it. So whatever it is that we are doing with ourselves in our faith is done outwardly with a sharedness to others. So when we start to look at our experience with substance use disorders as a family, then we're kind of like taking a step back and saying, so what is it that we experience in this journey? Well, one of the areas that we wanted to maybe help identify is in the area of faith and suffering. There's a lot of suffering that takes place in this journey with substance use disorders as a chronic disease. And you wonder, why is it necessary for me to experience this suffering in my life? Why is this happening? We're all good people. We're all trying to do the right thing. Well, that's going to be a part of your spiritual journey and your development. So we can't put it in a book and say, you should think this way. That would be wrong. We can point to other books that say, well, if you're of the faith that you believe that the Bible is a valuable statement to your life, then, and that's the way you follow and lead your life, then you might want to look at the book of Job and understand, the different chapters and why those chapters are there and how they apply to your life. Then there's other types of prophecies and parables and proverbs and wisdoms in the Bible that will help you to kind of assimilate what's happening to me here and what does it mean to me spiritually. I will say this, and maybe it's just me, but I've heard it said by many others, that when it comes to drug addiction, this is a battle of good and evil. It's almost like outside of ourselves. I mean, if you were the devil and you wanted to create something to destroy, then you'd want it to be something that, number one, the host becomes addicted to and has to have it. Number two, they use it to share with others so it destroys them once it's inside of them. And number three, it completely destroys the family dynamic because you don't want a family because you're evil. And four, because a community is just a collection of families grouped together, so you destroy the community. And then a bunch of communities are just a gathering which create a society, so you destroy the society. You see, that one element destroys everything it touches and goes into. It has to be evil. There is no goodness here. So when we sit there and we say, so why are we suffering in all of this? Well, only you can answer that. And I would try and find a place in your life where you can take the time and take your spiritual beliefs and start to apply it and say, what does all this mean to me from my teachings? I would talk to your pastor or your imam or your rabbi and ask them to help you to kind of assimilate, where are our faith teachings in the substance use disorders journey? Because they're very similar to other things that we would experience in other types of chronic diseases, and how are we practicing those for them? So the family is not responsible for shielding the substance users from the natural consequences that are going to take place. So you can't sit there and say, well, you must not have much faith. You're not a good, faith follower if you allowed this to happen to somebody that you care about. So there's a certain amount of guilt that sometimes gets passed around between you, the person who's misusing substances, and your faith. It's not always a if then this happened and we believe that that's not right. The family is responsible for not enabling, okay? Is responsible for kind of arranging things if they can that will help to support this person in long-term recovery. And they are responsible for attending to their own needs and self-care, okay? But, the person who's addicted, they have to admit that they have this problem, and they have to accept, help when it's available, and they have to, do the work that it takes to overcome the addiction, and they have to commit to a long-term recovery plan, okay? They have a role in this too. And there's nothing that you can say that, if they don't, then they don't have spiritual belief. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in themselves. That's not the case. We have to separate the substance use disorder impact from our faith practice. But at the same time, we're called in our faith practice typically to use God as a way of dealing with this. And the way that you can best do that is through self-contemplation and including others who are wiser than you in your faith practice to help you understand how they would see God's role in this regarding you and what you're up against. It's not so uncommon that this exact same scenario is part of a self-examination for other areas of your life. So the fact that you're going through this, like in stories in the Bible, it actually has a strengthening experience in how we see ourselves, what we believe to be true in our faith following, and how we use it. So if you wanted to maybe incorporate what we're doing here and say, I'd like to bring this into our church. I personally think that we could take these 32 issues and bring them into a ministry at our church and offer this as kind of like an AA, only it's about families finding solutions. It would be a family solution finder learning ministry. Actually, we've done that. We've taken this and we've put it into a concept model for churches for you to be able to include so that you can include your faith following in that. And then thereby a ministry would be provided, and you would be able to use the learning education that we've given here. Matter of fact, you could play these videos and have a group discussion, and then at the same meeting start to say, well, how does God want us to see this? So this is a way that you can help others that are experiencing the same kind of thing only as a faith group in your understanding what's taking place. Now, you could do the same thing separately and not have faith included. But in this case, we're talking about spiritual faith and spiritual faith practices. And we want you to know that we have a program called Sparks, Spiritual Arcs. And that's incorporated in a model that's titled Invest in the Family Ministry. So we have a book, just like we have a book for these 4 learning modules. We have a book that's titled, it's on Amazon, that's titled, and it's also, you can download it off our website for free. The Invest in the Family Ministry will show you exactly how to organize a ministry at your church and place of faith practice. It'll show you how to run the meeting. It'll give you the content, which we do provide for you. It'll show you how to help the person individually determine through a self-key of questions that's provided, where are they in their faith journey, which is kind of pretty cool. And if you choose to use that, it'll actually help them to understand maybe areas that they'd like to improve on that would strengthen them in their faith journey. See, sometimes it's not enough that we understand, we read a passage and we say, okay, well, that's great. I think I understand that. It could be of equal value to say, now this is how I'm going to apply it in my life. Well, that's what we've been doing here. We've given the learning guide, and then we've gone into the seminar workbook to apply it in your life, and then we've determined a solution, developed a decision, and designed a plan of action. And then in Module 4 for each issue, we've gone out and found a local resource that'll help us. In this case, we're going to do the same thing, only we're going to be including our faith practice. So this is the purpose of today's episode, is to have you now go to the area of Invest in the Family Ministries on our website, and that'll be listed at the end of this episode. You can write down what the website is. And then you can turn around and say, okay, let's look at the tab that has to do with Invest in the Family Ministries, and we've got a video there that'll explain all that. If you have any questions, our contact information is on our website. Call us. We'll walk you through it. We'll even help you. We'll even do a Zoom to help train your ministry leaders so that they can get it up and running. We want to see that our spiritual aspect of this journey is included. Just as much as the education, we are of a spiritual nature, and we need to pay close attention to that, if not even more so, because that is going to impact this, which will impact everything that has to do with what's going on in your life and the person that you care about. God's blessings in your journey. Hello, I want to thank you for continuing to view our episode. And we're now going to work into the area of the 3 Ds. This is an important characteristic for the family to develop skills in. And we'll start by taking the time to look at an issue and then determine the issues based on the area of determining a solution, developing a decision, and designing a plan of action. by using your Module 3 workbook and going to a specific issue, you'll be able to find that the first step in that 3D skill set is the FTR, the Family Transformational Model. And the Family Transformational Model is a set-up way, each time the same way, that we will take 5 categories to look at in determining a solution. And each category is going to have 3 questions. So let's get started. The first is to define the issue. Naturally, we'll want to know what the issue is. The word issue is really problem, but we're saying the word issue is, the reason we're saying the word issue is it's just a little bit easier to digest, because it's not always a problem. Sometimes it's just something that's happening, and we need to determine a solution to it. The next question is, how does the issue impact the family? We need to know that. We need to know we have an issue, that's fine. The issues can exist, but if it's impacting the family, in what way is it impacting the family? And then what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? That's very important for us to know. The fact is that this issue exists and it's impacting the family. We tend to believe maybe there was something we could have done to kind of get ready for it. And if there was, then we would want to have taken those steps, which is what all these episodes are about. And then who can help assist us and the family in our response? So we want to start to ask ourselves, we know that there's an issue, we know that it's impacting the family, and there are things that we could do to prepare for this, but we're probably going to need a resource, information, another person outside of our family, or maybe one of our family members specifically can use their functionality and contribute. So we want to identify that. And then what should the family expect as their outcome? And kind of a start with the end in mind thought, where we're saying, if we're going to do something, it's going to result in something. So is that result desirable? Is that really what we want? Because if we're going to create a solution, then we want the solution's outcome to be what we expect it would be. So in each of these categories that I just described, 1 through 5, there are 3 questions, and we're going to ask ourselves each of these. Let's go back into the first category, define the issue. Clearly state what happened or what will happen. We want to know very clearly what happened or what's likely to happen. And then write that down. Identify who's involved or who should be involved, and then what would you like to have happen or like to see happen. The third question in every category is going to be used. You'll see how in just a minute. But just remember, the third question in every category, so this question right here, the way you answer it, will be reused. Now the next question is, how is the issue impacting the family? Who in the family exactly is impacted? In what way are they impacted? And then the third question is, what is needed to move forward? And then the third category is, what steps can the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? The 3 questions again. What needs to be done? And then prioritize that list. Who needs to be involved? And then what will it look like, the third question, what will it look like when completed? Then the 4th category is, who can help and assist the family in their response? The 3 questions are, how to search and organize this organization to help you. In other words, it's not enough that you know you're going to go and introduce yourselves to a treatment center in your community. You want to start to determine, how do I look for them and organize my way of seeking help, because it might not just be that group alone. You may also need other services to kind of start to create a who can assist us. And it may be many different types of people. What to ask from them, and then what to expect. Remember the third question, what to expect. And then the 5th category is, what should the family expect as their outcome? Well, that has to do a lot with timing And if it takes a certain amount of time, let's be realistic of what that is. That has something to do with the expense of the involvement, of getting involved in this issue. And then the third question being required changes, our changes as family members, for this response to successfully take place. Now, let's state what our solution is. Hey, this is the great news. You've already developed your solution. By answering each of these three questions, the third question in every category, you'll pull forward now into your statement. So your first sentence of your statement is the third answer in the first category. What would you like to have happen or like to see happen? Well, that becomes your first sentence. So what your first sentence for your solution statement is, what we would like to see happen is, and you just pull your answer from there to here. Do the same thing with the second category. How does the issue impact the family? Using the third question's answer, what is needed for the family to move forward? So now your second sentence is, what's needed to move forward is, and now you're accumulating these answers from these categories, the third question, and it's actually becoming your first sentence, your second sentence, your third sentence, your fourth sentence, and your fifth sentence in your solution statement. So your solution statement is going to sound something like, what we would like to see happen is, and what's needed to move forward will be, and then the third question from the third category, what it will look like when completed will be, and then what we expect will be, and then what's required for us to have a successful response is. Now those are your 5 sentences. You've just constructed your solution. And this is how you go about using a model for creating a solution. For any issue in life you have to face, you can use this as a way of approaching it. Now let's go to the other area, which is the second coping skill, making a decision. Let's make a value-based decision. Let's make a decision each time that kind of balances with what we value most. So first we want to determine what are our values. Well, the best way to do that is to write down on a piece of paper, what types of things do you as an individual value most? And each member of your family can do this in a kind of a group exercise. And then once you've done that, I value love, I value honesty, I value relationships and sharing. These could all be an individual's 1, 2, 3. Then prioritize them. Which of the 1, 2, 3 is most important? Then have each member of the family do the same thing. And then you can sit there and say to the family, what was your number 1? What was your number 2? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? What was your number 1? And then what was your 2? What was your 2? What was your 3? What was your 3? And where you start to see many people in the family say, well, my number 1 is relationships, my number 2 was trust, and my number 3 was love. Well, then you talk to another person, they say, well, my number 1 was love, my number 2 was personal expression or confidentiality, or so they mentioned something different, but they did mention love. And then the third member of the family happens to mention love also. You know now that love is a value of the family. So whatever decisions you make, you want to balance it on the fact of, does this disrupt our values? If it does, at least you know that it does, and to what degree. You're calculating that. But at least also you're including, what do we value most? Let's make sure our decisions don't counter that. And now, in the first step, we're going to identify exactly what's happened. And this is, by the way, in your book, okay? And it is for each of the episodes. Now, identify exactly what's happened, what happened, how did it happen, who did it happen to. Then the second step is analyze the situation, assess the problem, identify the problem, and in what areas did the problem create an impact. You're writing all of these down. The third step of that the third step in the decision-making model is, what is the number of 1 contributing factor? What is causing this issue to take place? You need to know that before you make a decision. The fourth step is Now that you know the number one factor, you need to go out and find out what information there is about this. You know, your primary source, you're going to go to the actual person or organization that's involved with this and ask them, you know, what is this issue, and help us to understand it better. The secondary source would be somebody's telling you this happened, or somebody suggests that you should do something a certain way, and it's coming from somebody else other than the primary source. It could be an article, a clinical paper. These are all secondary sources, and you gather them and you make them part of your primary, secondary information gathering. The third area that you look at is your gut. What does your gut, because that's often where, you know, our faith comes in, and other things that are very important when making decisions get included. So trust your gut is what we're saying in the decision-making process. The fifth step in making a good quality decision is where you're kind of taking a criteria and saying, let's take what we're going to make a decision about and let's balance it on the criteria to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And this will ensure safety of your loved one. You know, is safety a part of what's being considered? And do we have the resources that are needed to do the decision we're looking at? And then do we understand the timetable? Is it realistic? And do we understand the negative impacts? Because every decision has a positive and negative. Well, identify what the negative outcomes might be so that you can weight the factor of, is this a good decision? And then would you do this if, would you ask others to do this if they were doing it for you? Meaning it was done for you or to you. Is this still a good decision? These are all areas that you want to take a look at. The third coping skill is in the area of the family plan of action. And everybody could say, well, Roy, listen, we're just going to go out and do it. Well, it's going to get done a lot more effectively. I want to warn you that the addiction industry is not organized. And then again, either is the family. So you're taking two disorganized organizations and you're putting them together. So a plan is a very good idea. The other factor is you're going to more than likely require the assistance of a lot of different groups. And as time goes by, those groups are going to change. And now it's a whole new set of groups that you're dealing with. When you're at the hospital, the ER, that's what that is. Then you move over to detox, that's what that is. Then you move over to therapy and treatment, and that lasts for 16 weeks. That's what that is. Then you're looking at sober living, recovery, maybe incarceration, and then reentry. On all that's involved in that. So there's all sorts of reasons why a plan put on paper based on the decision and the information gathering that you've made, based on the solution that you know you want to use, are very good ideas. It all comes together with the plan of action. Then you take the plan of action and you go find a professional to help you. Everything that we've done up to now is to position you to a place where you can be properly assisted and directed and supported. This is what's often missing in the families. This is what exhausts the families. This is where the families get into fights internally on. So, for that reason, we're going to apply the 3D coping skills. Determine a solution. We're going to develop a decision, and we're going to design a plan of action, and we're going to do it each time. I hope this is helpful for you. I'm confident it will be.